name that we do pray. Amen. All right. Let's talk about hope. Hope is an encouraging topic, I guess you could say. It's something that is delightful. It's a little bit of a twist on what we talked about last week. We talked about hell, so it's not as fun of a topic. But this week we talk about hope. And one of the things that we mention about hell is that it's a place that is optional. It is a place that is not necessarily that all go to. It is a place that we can not have to worry about. Why? Well, because we have a hope that is offered through Jesus and through the sacrifice that He gave because of the love of His Father and the dedication of Him to His Father's will. Anybody know what hope means?
Assurance.
Assurance? What else? I'm sorry? Anticipation. I thought you said participation. That's why I asked again. I was like, I don't think she said participation. What else? Expectation. That's a good one. Confidence. Confident expectation. The way I've seen it described several times is oh man, I literally was just saying it in my mind like 10 times. Desire, there we go. Desire plus expectation. I desire to go to heaven and I expect to go to heaven, therefore I have hope. I have hope through Jesus. I have hope through the Father. I have this desire, but I also have this expectation for that desire to be met. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's not for everybody. Yeah. I always find it interesting the way that we use words in the English language. You look at maybe even like the ending full. Hopeful, helpful, stressful. Sometimes that full adds a good connotation to it, and sometimes it doesn't. For the word hopeful, it is something that is a good connotation. It is to be full of hope, or to have a completeness exist within you because of hope. When we think about our hope in God, what are some of the things that give us hope in God? Besides I'll even leave that one open so we can use that one if you want that answer. The promise. What else? God's faithfulness. Which I guess you could even correlate with each other. His faithfulness to keep His promises. I'm sorry? The reward. Yeah. His love. Come on, y'all. Hopefully we'll be more hopeful than this. Come on. His grace. His peace and mercy. I like that idea of peace. You think about times of turmoil that we face. He offers us peace in those moments. Any other ones? Anything else we can be hopeful about as Christians? Guess not. All right. That's all right. Let's see. So that peace covers comfort. Comfort. Good night. It's one of those things. It's strange to me. The most simple words become the hardest for me to say sometimes. Comfort apparently is that one for us today, Miss Glenda. When we think about hope, though, there are these certain things that might pop in your mind. These certain things that might be at the forefront of our minds. Now, a strange thing about hope is at the same time as we're taught to be hopeful, and at the same time that we are taught to have hope in God, we're also taught to be content, which tells me something about our hopefulness. It means that our hopefulness should be placed in something that is proper or set within the eyes of God. Can we be hopeful about anything other than the promise of God? I know that maybe when it comes down to it, we shouldn't be, but in life we become hopeful about things. Man, I really hope that I can get an A on this test. I really hope that they finally have Tony Chachere's in stock at the store, which I struggled for about a month to buy. I really hope that such and such will pull through and do something for me. Some of these things that we place our hope in can fail us. The difference between our hope placed in God and the difference between our hope placed in material things or in things of the world, the hope placed in God it stands on a firm foundation. It stands on something that withstands. Meaning that if we place our hope in God, well, then we can know assuredly that His promises will come through. What we see here in Jeremiah chapter 29, we begin there's going to be a few passages that we look at about just mentioning some of these hopes that we're going to talk about this morning. But I want us to begin in Jeremiah 29, specifically beginning in verse 10. It says, "For thus says the Lord, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will visit you, and I will fulfill to you my promise and bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me, when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and all the places where I have driven you, declares the Lord. And I will bring you back to the place from which I sent you into exile." Okay, what is this message about from God? What is He writing about? It's pretty obvious, what He's mentioning here. What is that hope that He's writing them about? At a specific time. What is that specific promise? The Jews would be able to come home. Where were they? In captivity to whom? Babylon. It's making a promise to them. You will be able to return. But notice here in verse, what did I put here? 11. "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Notice verse 12 though. "Then you will call upon me and come to me and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me, when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord. I will restore your fortunes, gather you from all the nations, and all the places where I have driven you, declares the Lord. I will bring you back to the place from which I sent you into exile." So He's making mention to them, okay, there's going to come a time when you're going to leave Babylonian captivity and return. But there's some other things that are included within that message. What are those other things? One big one, at least. What's that again? If. Yeah, it's a big if. And that if is something that Jesus would even quote at a later date. "Knock and it shall be open. Seek and what? And you shall find." Notice the big if statement within this text here.
Give them this promise without condition. But He said that this is after. When I give you this,
Then. Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the promises that God gives the children of Israel at different times are conditional upon what they do first. This time, He says, "I'm going to do this, and then you're going to call me. And if you then call me, there will be added
Blessings and hope, yeah. Mm-hmm. And a future, yeah.
This one's a little bit different than most of them.
Yeah, in a sense too, but also what helped them to come out of the Babylonian captivity? That their awareness of their reason for exile. Yeah. So.
Once again, we said again, I have heard your call.
Yeah.
I have heard your cry.
Yeah.
I have heard your plea. We heard that over and over
Yeah.
again. It looks like they would quit having to come to
Yeah.
That's the reason He's speaking to them here.
I always wondered, especially not maybe with the writing or the times during Jeremiah, but especially once you get into the years and the times of the minor prophets, and even within the times of the judges, you get within this loop. Y'all remember the loop of the judge? The judges loop is what I think they called it in school, something like that. You had faithfulness, unfaithfulness, judgment, and then guess what came back around? Faithfulness, and then guess what came after that? Unfaithfulness, judgment. It was this big rotation, and they'd put forth a messenger of God, and they would listen, and they would hear the message of God being delivered to them, a message of warning, and they'd listen to it, and then they would turn their backs on that same messenger and curse him and speak out against him, and it would bring on punishment, and they'd just start the cycle over and over and over again. When we think about that, sometimes it gets very At least for me, it was very discouraging at times to know that God's people were in this constant cycle. But then you begin to look at your own life and go, you know what, I've been in those shoes. I've been in that position. I've been in that situation where I was at the worst point of my life, and then I was at the best point because something allowed for me to come back to God. But then little by little, that same message that exalted me and lifted me up and gave me hope was the same message that I would begin to doubt or speak out against or struggle with. The same message that I would no longer hold fast to, which would allow for me to slip back into that moment of separation from God and this cycle, time and time again. What we're seeing here in Jeremiah, though, is this idea that God is giving His people hope. In this specific instance, it's this bringing out of exile, out of bondage from Babylon, and being brought into the land that they had been taken from, and given a hope, not just a temporary hope, but a hope for the future and plans for the future. Israel struggled a very, very long time with their relationship with God. It was very up and down in its nature. But at the same time, at the end of the day, the nation of Israel was still considered to be God's people. And when it ceased to be God's chosen nation, when it ceased to be the elect of God, is when they began to finally stray away from God for too long. I want us to notice something as well. We made mention of the idea, I guess was it Wednesday night we talked about fullness of time? Was that some of that? Yeah, Wednesday night we talked about fullness of time. We talked about God's timing of things. And I thought about that a little bit more this week, and I began to think about the necessity for Jesus' coming to the earth because of the relationship that Israel then had with God. It was at a very, very low point. It had become so traditional, so overran with man's laws and judgments and stipulations and traditions that it had ceased to be that nation that God had built. And it had ceased to be that thing that God had made to be His people, which could be another reason why Jesus came at that time. Yeah.
I think God wasn't capable.
Yeah.
Their power structure that they had added to it.
Well, it was impossible for them to be a good Jew, much less a perfect Jew. It wasn't enough that, there's 600 plus commandments, they all had all these traditions as well. And, yeah. And even then, even if they were to become the perfect Jew, they still were not made perfect because the system or the law was not meant to be that perfection. It was meant to point towards the cross. Looking at Job here, does anybody have any thoughts about Jeremiah 29 before we move on to Job? All right, Job 19. We're going to look specifically beginning with verse 1. Job answered and said, "How long will you torment me and break me into pieces with words? These 10 times you have cast reproach upon me. Are you not ashamed to wrong me? And even if it be true that I have erred, my error remains with myself. If indeed you magnify yourselves against me and make my disgrace an argument against me, know then that God has put me in the wrong and closed His net about me. Behold, I cry out, violence, but I am not answered. I call for help, but there is no justice. He has walled up my way so that I cannot pass, and He has set darkness upon my paths. He has stripped me from my glory and taken my crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side, and I am gone. And my hope has He pulled like a tree. He has kindled His wrath against me, and He counts me as an adversary. His troops come together. They cast upon me their siege ramp against me and encamp around my tent." Let's continue. Instead of just stopping at verse 12, let's continue a little bit. "He has put my brothers far from me, and those who knew me are wholly estranged from me. My relatives have failed me. My close friends have forgotten me. The guests of my house and my maidservants count me as a stranger. I have become a foreigner in their eyes. I call to my servant, but he gives no answer. I must plead with him with my mouth for mercy. My breath is strange to my wife, and I am a stench to the children of my own mother. Even young children despise me, and I rise, they talk against me. All my intimate friends abhor me, and those whom I have loved have turned against me. My bones stick to my skin and the flesh, and to my flesh. I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. Have mercy on me, you my friends, for the hand of God has touched me. Why do you, like God, pursue me? Why are you not satisfied with my flesh? Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. Oh, that an iron pen and lead, they were engraved in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last He will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself. My eyes shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. If you say, how we will pursue Him, and the root of the matter is found in Him, be afraid of the sword, for wrath brings the punishment of the sword, that you may know that there is a judgment. What is going on here in Job's life? Oh, it's going to be a long day, y'all, if I'm already starting off like this. I'll go ahead and warn you, by the way, one of the people we're talking about in the sermon is Jochebed, which was Moses' mother. And there was a song that me and Dad used to listen to all the time called Giacomo Finane. So if I call Jochebed Giacomo today, no, I'm not singing a Cajun song. I'm trying to say Moses' mother. But it's going to happen. I can promise you. It's happened like 10 times this week. What were you going to say? I'm sorry, Mr. Dell. Okay, my bad. Go ahead. I don't even remember. Yeah. There we go. What's going on here? It's a fitting question for now and then as well. What's going on in Job's life here?
Well, he's having this discussion with his friends that they condemned him all the way through. But the striking, the whole first part of that is describing utter hopelessness. Stuff that we, I hope, will never ever go through. But he just all the way down. And he truly has nothing left. There is no hope left in him. But in the end,
Yeah.
he even says, I hope that we can all be at the end. He still has that hope for when he's gone.
Yeah.
And what God's done for him. But the utter hopelessness that's described here is just, it's striking. And then all of a sudden, he still says at the end, I have hope.
Yeah. And you know, the strange part about this is, if you'll remember, what was the statement made about Job, about his faithfulness? It says that in all that he said or did, Job never sinned. He never sinned. So we look at this description here and you begin to see, okay, this seems like some pretty harsh words to say against God. You know, these seems like some pretty rough statements here. Blaming God for this and that and talking about all the things that God has done to me and the pain that He has put me through. And so even in this moment, Job's words were not sinning. I would ask why, but you kind of already answered that. Because he mentions these things not out of spite. He mentions these things as a way of saying, God is doing this, I don't know why. But God obviously has a reason in doing this, and I still have hope in the future.
I think what it talks about, Job doesn't sin. Obviously, we know that we all sin. We all fall short.
Yeah.
So it can't be that he's perfect. It has to be the state of his heart. Even when he makes mistakes, he was in his mind serving God and doing the best that he could. And it was unaware that he was being wrong. So in other words, his heart was right and pure, even when he might have failed. So his only thought, his only intention was God, and Satan never come in to his thought.
Yeah.
So he knew he wasn't serving Satan.
Yeah.
So then Satan can't be
Punishing him.
in his mind. So it must be God because he was only serving God. That has to be his thought.
I would also say, maybe to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, would be that, and Job even mentions it here, if I'm not mistaken, the justice of God. And in his mind, that's what's happening. I don't know what I did. I don't know when I did it. But I'm suffering through this because of the justice of God. I deserve this. And I don't know if Job really truly came up with this statement all on his own, because his wife, his friends, everyone around him began to say things like this. You must have done something wrong. In fact, this is tucked right in the middle of the several chapters that his few friends had of just constant berating of Job. You've done something horrible. You've done something wrong. You must have sinned. You must have done something wrong. But even in this moment, Job is recognizing these things and saying these things, but at the same time, he's also being hopeful. I want us to notice something here. Notice what he says in verse 13. Notice his hopelessness here. He has put my brothers far from me, and those who knew me are wholly estranged from me. My relatives have failed me. My close friends have forgotten me. The guests in my house, my maidservants, have become to me as a stranger, or count me as a stranger. I have become a foreigner within their eyes. I call to my servant, and he gives no answer. I must plead with him with my mouth for mercy. The breath is strange. My breath is strange to my wife, and I am a stench to the children of my own mother. Even the young children despise me. When I rise up, they talk out against me. All my intimate friends abhor me, and those whom I have loved have turned against me. My bones stick to my skin and to my flesh, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. That sounds like a morning praise song? I don't think so. That sounds like depression. Job is facing this moment where he says, nobody loves me. Nobody cares for me. The ones who I used to consider to be my best friends, they abhor me. They despise me. My wife, it even seems like I have become a stranger to her. The children of my mother, which is a strange way of saying my siblings. My siblings, they despise me. They rebuke me. I have become like a stranger to them. He even goes so far to say, bless his heart here. That's the southern mama way of saying it, bless his heart. That's what he's going through. Even young children, verse 18, even young children despise me. When I rise up, they talk out against me. Job is saying, I can look to nowhere for peace. Everything around me is turmoil and destruction and pain and suffering. At no point is he finding peace or comfort. And so you see this struggle that Job is facing at this moment of trying to figure out, okay, I don't know why this is happening. I don't really understand. I must have done something wrong. I still have hope in God and I still have confidence in God, but I've obviously done something wrong because my family, they hate me. My servants, they don't listen to me. They do not answer. And a good part of that's probably because most of them were dead. I mean, most of them had died and been killed. So there's a reason why they're probably not answering his call when he calls out. His wife has turned her back upon him. His friends have left him. His brothers and sisters have left him. Even the random children in the city, they speak out against him, mock him, just for something as simple as standing up. And he makes mention in verse 20, my bones, they stick to my skin and to my flesh. What is he saying there? He's evidently lost weight. We'd say he needs to eat something, He's become skin and bones, is what he's saying. And notice here, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. What does he mean by I have escaped? What has he escaped? Death. Everyone around me despises me. Everyone around me speaks out against me or treats me like a stranger or mocks me. And even my own body has almost killed me. Verse 21, have mercy upon me. Have mercy on me, O you my friends, for the hand of God has touched me. Why do you, like God, pursue me? Notice that he's making mention. Why are you attacking me the way that God was? Or why were you seeking after me the way that God was? Why are you not satisfied with my flesh? Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. Oh, that an iron pen and lead, they were engraved in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself. My eyes shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. If you say, how we will pursue him, and the root of the matter is found in him, be afraid of the sword, for the wrath brings punishment to the sword, that you may know that there is a judgment. There are a few things that Job says that he knows. A few things that he makes very, very poignant within his message. He knows that he's in a tough spot in his life. I'll get to you in just a second. He knows that he's in a tough spot. He's witnessed all these things happening to him, the way that people treat him around him. But notice what he says here in verse 25. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has then been destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see him, who I shall see for myself, my eyes shall behold him, and not another. My heart faints within me. Even though I'm facing all these horrible, terrible, evil, wicked, destructive, painful, depressing things, I know one thing is for sure, that God will stand in judgment. I will stand before Him long after my flesh has departed. Long after this skin and bones has fallen apart and turned to ash. I will still be able to be with my God. And I'll stand before judgment. And he also used it not just as a way of comfort for himself, but also a little bit of a way of warning for his friends. You should know too. I'm not the only one who's going to be judged on judgment. Yes, sir.
So it seems a lot like Job has caught in the moment.
Yeah.
And along with his friends too. You got to remember, Job has boils on his skin all over his body. To the point there he's in such agony and pain, the only relief he can get is he takes a broken piece of pottery and scrapes his skin, which I'm sure is a lot more agonizing. But if you look at it from the other people's perspective as well, his family, his friends, and everything else, the culture of that time is when somebody has these boils on their skin, they have some kind of disease or whatever, stay far, far away from them. You don't want to get and you know, so it's not like the people are just despising him for no reason. It's the conditions that he is in and the culture at that time, from what his friends knew and from what other people around him knew. The culture of the time was things like this don't come on people unless you know something wrong.
Yeah.
God only does this.
And for Him to wipe out everything around you, you must have been.
Those people are caught in the moment as well.
Yeah.
Going off of what they know. And we don't find out until later in Job that, well, maybe your perspective was a little off here. Same for Job and same for his friends. When God tells him, Job was right here, you guys were wrong. You need to fix this. And here's Job's instructions on how you can fix this.
And I think also, kind of building upon that, what he mentions in verse 5, 6, and 7, I guess, maybe 8 as well. Yeah, 5 through 8 is that mentality exactly what he's saying. Notice what he says beginning in verse 5. If indeed you magnify yourselves against me and make disgrace and arguing against me, know then that God has put me in the wrong, notice this, and has closed His net about me. You make mention of being caught in the moment. He literally uses the analogy of a net here. And then he begins to make mention in verse 7. Behold, I cry out violence, but I am not answered. I call for help, there is no justice. Verse 8. He has walled up my way so that I cannot pass. He has set darkness upon my paths. He has stripped me from the glory and has taken the crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side, and I am gone. My hope He has put up like a tree. He has kindled His wrath against me and counts me as His adversary. His troops come on together, and they have cast up their siege ramp against me and a camp around my tent. He is literally describing being caught in this moment. He is describing this idea of being trapped. I'm sure everybody's dealt with different things in their lives. I mean, that's one of the beautiful parts about life is that we all have our own unique paths and we all have our own unique things that we've struggled with. I don't want to say luckily, it might be more sadly, but in a helpful way. I guess God has placed people within our lives and my family's lives that God has blessed with my parents an opportunity to serve them in a way that helps them out in a time of need, that offers a hand when times struggle. I don't want to talk too much about my mama because it is Mother's Day. She's going to get some praise in the sermon too, don't worry about it. But one thing that I absolutely love and adore about both my parents is, we have me and my brother, and that's it. We also have about 20 other kids that my parents helped raise. And some of the descriptions that we have received, especially from those who have, looking back on what some of the works that my mom and dad have done for them in the past, and even my grandparents as well, but specifically my mom and dad in this instance, was they described moments when they felt like there was no way out. God has shut every door. God has closed every opportunity off to me. They felt this hopelessness that Job was feeling. I'm surrounded by pain and suffering. Nobody loves me. I'm all alone. There's nothing that I can do. Everything is going wrong. Why am I even still here? Job recognizes that yes, he's in this place where he's caught up. Yes, he's in this moment of despair. But the thing that is beautiful about Job's mindset towards God is that even in this time of despair, he still has that hope. He still has that mindset of, this isn't the end. There's more to it. I'll stand before God and I'll answer for Him in a just manner. Sometimes our hopelessness completely consumes our lives to the point where we're blinded by the blessings that Jesus has placed before us. You know, when I think about, you talk about the idea of pessimist or an optimist, the glass half full kind of people. I can be mad at something if I want to be mad at it. I can get angry at something if I want to. I can focus on the wrong, focus on the evil, focus on the bad, to the point where I become furious. But at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm blinding or blocking out those things that I should consider to be as helpful or hopeful or bring me joy. You think about, you ever heard of like a negative Nancy or a Debbie Downer? You ever heard of those phrases? Yeah. You know, everything can go nice and good. There's always that one thing. There's always that one thing. If we're not careful, our mindsets can become so fogged of the things that allow for our mindsets to be fogged that we'll forget to see the blessings that God has placed within our lives. Man, you know what? That breakfast that my kids made me this morning, not me. You know, the breakfast that my kids made me this morning, it was burnt. But at least I had something to eat. At least I had kids to make it. Whether or not I had to chew it like eating a tire on the way down, you know, it was still a blessing. You know what? I got another flat tire. That's the 5th one this year. Hopefully not. That's pretty rough luck right there. 5th one this year. You know what? At least I got a car. We can become so blinded by the things that bring us down in life that we forget to remember all the great blessings. You know, we mentioned in our study of prayer several months back, we mentioned this idea of what blessings would you have today if the only blessings you received were the ones that you specifically mentioned in prayer the day before. Okay, I don't know about y'all, but I wouldn't be experiencing this air conditioning because I didn't pray for that yesterday. Didn't pray for the padded pews. Didn't pray for this nice, comfortable place for us to be in today. We can become so spoiled, for lack of a better term. No, it's not lack of a better term. That is the best term. We become so spoiled that we forget all the great things that God has given us. I don't think that Job here was spoiled. I think that what Job was experiencing is Job was truly seeing all the things that he had leave him, turn away from him, even in his own mind betray him. And he's experiencing great pain and suffering. But even in that moment, he still finds joy in knowing and hope in knowing that God's judgment is fair, righteous, merciful, full of love, and full of justice.
You think he may not have at the end of his hopelessness, he may have had a bit of an epiphany in the Lord. I have escaped by the skin of my teeth.
Yeah.
And you think, and then right after that is when he goes into the
Hope. Yeah.
And he came to the realization.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That through all of these things, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
I still, by the skin of my teeth, and the realization that I'm still here. Don't we need to do that all
Oh,
the
yeah.
time? I guarantee you, every one of us can do this. It won't be get this, do this. So we can't do what we do. And then we have to come to the real, I think before we get better, before we can feel it, before our minds can change and this world that we go through with everybody's, the depression and the anxieties and all that, I think we have to get to that realization that I'm still here and God's still with us. Job did.
Yeah.
And
And
he
it's
changed right after that.
one of the few lessons that I've learned since I've been married is that my wife and I think drastically differently. You know, I'm the type of person that if I'm upset about something, I'm going to call my dad and I'm going to chew him out for something that he didn't do. He knows what I'm doing. For 30 minutes, I'll just gripe and complain, and then he'll go, okay, you feel better? All right, move on. Okay, my wife doesn't like that. You know, in my mind, that's like, okay, you feel better? Well, no. What did I do wrong? Now it just starts a whole other section, and now I'm the bad guy kind of thing. I'm the type of person that I need a suck it up buttercup friend, you know, that get it all out, flesh everything out, and then I'll go, okay, do you feel better? Now go do something about it. Now that you've gotten the anger out of the way, now look at what you need to do. Okay, my wife's not in the same way. We won't get into that too much. She's not here, so she can't defend herself, so I'm not going to do that to her. When we look at that mentality, when we look at the way that things go like that, sometimes we need those moments where we flesh everything out, get so angry, get so aggravated, and then, all right, I'm over it. It's behind me. Now what do I need to do about this? Now that I've got the emotion out of the way, where's the logic got to kick in? Where's this work put into practice need to go? I'm just hoping my wife don't watch a live stream or else I get in trouble for that. So, and then y'all will hear about it for about 30 minutes when I call y'all and gripe and complain. And y'all say, suck it up, buttercup. Okay, see, that's how the cycle works. We talk about this cycle. Do y'all want me to be alive next week? I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It needs to be a private matter, yeah. And on top of that, sometimes you hear your own ridiculousness within your statements. You know, you think of those never statements or those always statements. She never does this. He never does that. Or he always says this or always says that. No, they don't. They don't. I know I'm speaking to the choir here because all y'all have been in my shoes at one point feeling the exact same way. I hope you have at least, or else I'm just crazy. Hopefully that's not the case. But you know, you get these never statements. Sometimes it takes somebody to go, they don't always say that. They don't always do this. They don't never do that for you. Sometimes you need this moment of reason, but a lot of times what you need to get out of the way is that emotion. You get caught up in the moment, caught up in the emotion. And once again, I know I'm speaking to the choir, a man married for 2.5 years, speaking to a crowd of people married for twice as long as I've been alive for some of y'all. So, you know, but at the same time, it's one of those things that's one of the tough lessons to learn in marriage, but that's a tough lesson to learn in life itself. Sometimes our emotions cloud ourselves to the point where we forget all the great things that God has given us. Let's not spend too much time on that because I'm just going to be rambling on about it. Luke 24, verses 13 through 27, specifically mentioning in this moment, we only have 3 minutes, so I'm not even going to turn to it for too deep. Specifically mentioning in this moment, verse 21, but we had hoped that He was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things have happened. Doesn't take long for maybe us to catch some context as to what's going on here in verse 21. What's occurring here in this moment? I'll give you a hint, it has something to do with the death of Jesus. They're kind of losing hope. They're without hope at this moment. Notice, we had hoped. Past tense. We had hoped that He was the one who was going to redeem Israel. Okay, what made them lose the hope? Well, the one who was supposed to redeem Israel is dead. They didn't get it. In fact, they even made a statement that they didn't even fully understand until later that day. It is now the 3rd day since these things have happened. What are these things that have happened? Well, the thing that made them cause to lose their hope. Jesus has died. He was supposed to redeem Israel. And now we're on day 3, and guess what? There's still no Jesus. So these things have placed them in a position without hope. Now, they'd eat these words in just a little bit. But at the same time, sometimes we get in the same situation within ourselves. Maybe question God or speak out against God or speak out against Jesus. You were supposed to bring me peace. You're supposed to bring me comfort. Where's that love? Where's that mercy now? Where were you when such and such happened in my life? Why didn't you save me from this pain or this suffering? Sometimes we lose hope because we forget about Jesus' promises. One of the things that Jesus makes very clear within His promises is that man, both Christian and non-Christian, will suffer loss, pain, suffering, no matter what it is. They'll have hardships and face hard times. But we can't get through those unless we remember the great promise that this world is temporary, that this pain is temporary. That loss is just for a little while. That pain or suffering is just for a moment. there's something that is far better that gives us hope that we can look forward to for the future. Okay, next week we're going to talk about mothers. Coincidentally, we may mention that we're a little bit off just because the way the Sundays fell for this year. But y'all get a whole week this week, mothers. So it's good for you. You don't just get one day this year. So we'll pick up on the topic of mothers next week. Thank you for your time.